Hey gamers, today we're going to look at Yspahan. Let's check it out. To set up the game, you're going to put the player board out and put the little supervisor here where it has the supervisor mark there. You're going to put these two white cubes, one for tracking the weeks and one for tracking the days of the week in the game. This game takes place over 3 weeks. You're going to have your deck of cards here, shuffle those. You get your camel track up here, and then you'll have your dice track right here. Each player will get their own little player board with their little buildings they can build in the game. They'll get cubes of all their colors, and they'll start off with 2 gold coins. And of course, this is the first player marker, this bland looking black pawn here, but you give that to the first player. How this game works is very simple. What you're going to do is you're going to take all these dice, and these are nice wooden die here, and you're going to roll them, and then what you're going to do, and this is kind of unique, you're going to take the highest number, in this case it's a 6, and put that at the top. Then, starting at the bottom, put the lowest number, which in this case is a 1, and build up from there. So there's a 2, 3, and a 5. So you'll notice this area will never be used unless you roll all 6 numbers on the die. So anyway, that's basic setup. Now when this happens, starting with the first player, they're going to choose one of these rows, and then it's going to go around to each other player, and then you're going to re-roll and start all over again. So what can you do on each one of these rows? Well, let me show you. The first row is pretty simple. You see there's a little gold there. That means however many dice are in here, you would get that many gold. So if I was to take these 2, I would get 2 gold, and I just put them in my supply there. These next 4 areas are places where you can place cubes on top of these buildings. And as you see, the vase area is over there, crate area here, bag area here, and barrel area there. And so what you would do, you would choose any one of these dice here. For instance, let's say I chose the crate action. I would take the crate here, and then I would put down 3 cubes anywhere in the crate area. So maybe I'd want to go 1, 2, 3, and you put them on top of the roofs there. Now, when you do this action, that's basically it. But when you're placing cubes, there's a few rules. Let's say I was to place them here on the pink instead. Now, I cannot start on the next turn, I can't start on another building if I have not completed the previous building I was working on. Another rule is if another player has already played on top of that building, I can't play on those buildings on a color that the player has already played upon. So those are the 2 rules in the game. Now, if it was a different area, I could start on maybe even a different color in a different area. But like I said, like in this bag area, if I was to start on blue, that would be illegal because I had already started on yellow. I must finish yellow first before I can start another color. And if I wanted to start on pink, and let's say I was finished here, if I wanted to start on pink, I could not because red was already there. So those are some of the rules when placing cubes on the board. This is for camels. For as many as dice are on here, you'll take that many camels. And camels have different uses in the game, and I'll get to those in a minute. Now, when you're, after everyone's picked, you'll re-roll the die and move the tracker 1 spot like that. And there are some other actions on this board that you can take. One of them is the supervisor action. On the supervisor action, you can take, instead of using the main actions on these die, you can use these actions to move the supervisor. And when you're moving the supervisor, you can actually boot other people out of buildings. So let me give you an example here. Let's say this is what the board looked like for some reason, and one of the players picked this row. Well, they only get to move the supervisor 5 spaces because this is the pip number 5. So they move them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now you see the area they're next to is this yellow cube. They would boot this yellow cube off the board, and they go off into oblivion. So this is a way to bust up people's monopolies when, as I said, you can score big points on these buildings if you get cubes on all of them at the end of the week. So the supervisor, let's say another player came around, they grabbed the 2 and they went 1, 2, and then they booted out green. In some cases, like this building over here, if someone moved 1, 2 right here, they could boot out both red and green. So you can start booting off other people's colors, and that's the same way going horizontal across the board as well as vertically when moving the supervisor. So if you want to bust up other people's monopolies there, that's a good thing to do. Now, one of the options people have, if their cube gets booted and they have a camel, they can pay a camel and move their cube over to this camel track. And when they do, they're going to get victory points. They're going to get 2 victory points per each, each time they put a camel in the first row. On the second row, they're only getting 1 victory point. And on the third row, they're getting no victory points. So as the cubes are piling up here, when it gets to the end of the week, these cubes will score again, and they'll score a little bit differently. As you see the numbers 1, 2, and 3. That means the highest that anyone has reached up here, they're going to count whatever cubes they have on the board and multiply it by that level. So if green had one up here, he'd count 3 times the number of victory points as the number of cubes he has on the track, which could add up to be a lot. Same thing for anyone. If they didn't have anything but on the second track, then they can only multiply their cubes by 2. And of course, if they only had cubes on the first track, they could only multiply them by 1 again, getting 1 victory point each. Now, there is something about this track, though. If it completely fills up before the week is over and someone else moves in to put a cube on that track, then you have to wipe the board clean and start all over again. Now, why you would want to do that is because maybe it's getting close to week 7 and you don't want someone scoring those big weekend victory points, so you just start putting some of your cubes on the board by booting supervisors, or sometimes you want to boot yourself to get over here to get some extra points. Maybe you won't have enough time to score those buildings like you thought you would. Anyway, this is a very easy track to forget about during the game, but to be honest, it's a very important track because you can score a lot of victory points that way. So that's basically everything that entails with moving the supervisor around. You're booting cubes, and you need a bunch of camels to start booting people over here so you can get some extra victory points throughout the day and of course at the end of the week. Now, the third action you can take on any of these areas here is taking a card. Now, these cards are all different, but they can do different things in the game. Like this one gives you 3 camels. This lets you put a cube on the camel track. This lets you build a building without using camels, and I'll explain what that is. This lets you put a cube somewhere on the board. This one gives you 3 coins. This lets you exchange camels for coin or coin for camels 1 for 1. So they basically give you a lot of little powers in the game, and once you use them, they're done. But you can get them on any of these if you don't want to take the main action or you don't want to move the supervisor. Let me get on to going on what these gold can do. Gold can do a lot of things too. For instance, let's say the player rolled this and they wanted to use some more die. Well, for each gold coin they cash in, they can get up to 3 of these yellow die and roll them as well. So let's say green player cashed in 3 gold coins. Then they could add these to the board, and as you see, here we go. So now instead of 2 having 1 action, it can have 3 actions. And let's say they took this action. They say, oh, now I want to take this one and put some cubes in the sack area there. Okay, now once their turn's done, they remove any other yellow cubes from the game because it was their gold coin that paid for that. Now the next player, they may want to spend some gold coin. Maybe they spend 2 gold coin to hopefully put some more options there on the board. That's per player. So that's one of the things that gold can help you do in the game. Now another thing that both gold and camel can help you with is build buildings. Again, every player is going to have the same player board with the same 5 buildings or 6 buildings. They don't have to build these in order, but they do have to pay the cost located at the bottom here unless they have one of these cards that say differently. So once you pay the cost for these, what you're going to do is put one of your cubes in that area and you're going to get the reward. So for instance, the first one, whenever you grab from the camel area, you'll get a +1 camel. If you grab from the coin area and you've built this building, you get +2 coins. This one lets you move the supervisor 3 spaces forward or 3 spaces less than what the die indicates. Basically, it gives you more control on where to move the supervisor, because when you're picking a 5, you cannot stop at 3, 2, or 1. You have to go 5 spaces, and you can't do this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can't do that either. So this one lets you subtract that by 3 or add 3 to it, 1, 2, or 3. It could be 1, 2, or 3. So this I could go 9 spaces with this, or 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3 spaces if I had this, and that's at no cost. That means you don't have to pay coins. Usually, if you want to stop or go ahead further, you have to pay a coin to mitigate the supervisor according to the die and how fast he moves. But with this one, you don't have to pay any coin, and you can move him less or up to 3 spaces. This one, every time you bump one of your cubes to the camel area, you get to pick a card, which is really nice. This one, whenever you score, and you score these buildings at the end of every week, but every time you win an area, you'll get a +2 to that area. So that's really nice. And then this one's super nice. Whenever you get to place cubes out, you get to place 1+ cube. So for instance, if I wanted to place 2 in Crate Land, I could actually place 3 of them here, and then boom, boom, boom. I just got yellow buildings. Ooh, yes, we're going to be worth 6 points at the end of this week. Anyway, you're also getting bonus points for however many buildings you build. The first 2 buildings you build, you won't get any victory points, but the next 3 you build, you'll get 5 victory points each. And then finally, if you build them all, you'll get a bonus 10 victory points. Now, like I said, it would go to the next player. You pass the starting pawn to the next player. They would roll the die, again putting the highest number at the top, lowest number at the bottom. So there's a 1 there. 5s would be at the top. Ooh, wow, what an interesting roll. And then a 3 and a 4, and then players would all choose. The game ends after the 3rd week, and of course, whoever has the most victory points by that time wins the game. Final thoughts, what do I think about the game? Well, you know me, folks, if you've been watching the channel long enough, I love unique games and really unheard of games. I won't even tell you how I should tell you how I found this. I was looking for games that began with a Y. I don't know why, because I was like, man, I got a game of everything in the alphabet but Y. So I started looking up games with Y, and I didn't find many that really pulled me in, but when I saw this one, I was like, ooh, this looks good. And I was like, well, I think I'll get this regardless of the name. So I was searching for a board game that began in a Y. This is really stupid, I know. And found a really awesome game. It's very simple, easy to learn, easy to understand. It sings at 4 players because there's so many different choices. And even though you may have missed out some of the big choices, when you start moving the supervisor around, I can't tell you how many times I needed camels and did not get the camels. You want to have camels and coin, but you want to get those area control points too. A lot of those buildings touch the outside areas. And so you can actually lose a big majority. Sometimes you can get booted completely out, and then someone, when none of your cubes are in any of those buildings, they can come in and snatch that building from underneath you. I really like that. Building the buildings can be a good strategy too. You don't have to build them in player order, by the way. I mean, in the order that you saw on the board, you can play them out of order. And I remember I unlocked the biggest one first, and it took me forever. But when I did, man, I started rolling in points. Don't forget about the camel track. A lot of my friends, when we first played it, we didn't play with the camel track that much. We got maybe just a couple of points. And then I think a few of us started using the camel track a little bit more because we had camels, thank goodness. And then that camel track became popular. Everyone started using it. But I like it because even if there's one die there and you're like, well, that's not worth planting a cube in that area, or, you know, that's not, well, get a card. Or, you know, move the supervisor. Supervisor starts getting moved a lot. So the game gives you plenty of options and you're never left with nothing to do, even though you're the last one to draft die that round. And I love the little wooden coins. I love the little camels in the game. And this game is super cheap used. And so that's another great thing about the game. So, and again, this is kind of light, but with plenty of options. And I do enjoy it, staying in my collection. Really happy. Hey, I got a game that begins with a Y. All right, gamers, that's all the time I have for now. Until next time, you know what to do. Game on!